Hey guys, it's Jay here with another review video. Before the review begins, I'd like to ask if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and share with others. Without further ado, onto the vid. The episode begins with Yukiko staring at the hole she made in the monster, though it slowly starts to heal, and she wonders to herself if she's supposed to defeat a 20-foot giant with 3 heads who can heal after being disemboweled. The giant prepares his sword and swings it upward, breaking Yukiko's ice in the process. As she dodges another pass of the sword, she thinks to herself that her uncles have trained her for conflict, and for unexpected moments where survival depends on oneself. She says even if she can't defeat it, she doesn't have to worry about it going after anyone else. The swing of the blade also has her think that the giant is quick for its size, and that it doesn't make any sense. The giant then raises its foot and kicks Yukiko, which sends her directly into the ice, making a crater in the process. Though she is fine and says it's time for her to start making some noise. The giant then comes in and stabs where Yukiko was, though she is already rolled out of the way. As she lands, she does a 2-finger flicking motion, which sends ice at the giant, trapping its left arm. She then dashes forward and cuts through its right leg, and as she looks back, thinks to herself, what if she can slow it down? But before she can think anything else, the giant attempts to cleave at her, freeing its arm in the process. Yukiko then grabs at her father's signature sword as she says Yuki no Kata, black ice, which sends a massive wave of black ice at the giant, which destroys most of its right side. This impresses both Ephialtes and Azam, with Ephialtes even being surprised as Yukiko is just a child. We then see Princess Yukiko Heart, who is nicknamed the Leopard's Cub, as she holds her father's sword in her right hand, her original one in her left. It is also revealed that she has a classified rank. The scene then switches to Leith yelling at his 2 men to hurry and get the truck running, as with the commotion, Code's ears are perked. He says there may be checkpoints along the road, but to stop for no one, and to not wait for his signal, but to just go. The 2 say yes sir, and as the animal-faced one gets into the truck, he is quickly taken out with the divine halberd. Leith screams out no as Andrea slides towards him. She then uses her green blades to force him to block, as she follows up with a kick that sends him into the building. Andrea then stares down the other foot soldier, before then kicking him into the truck's trailer. She winds up her fist and punches the front end of the truck, leaving it with severe damage. Something then flies towards Andrea, which hits her shield and leaves it cracked and pinned against a wall. Leith then appears out of smoke and rips his shirt off, and declares Andrea is dead. Andrea says he isn't the first to make such a declaration, and she assures that he won't be the last. As she looks at the destruction from Shay's battle with Martinez, she says it only takes a spark to ignite a war. She says those that seek it aim to disguise their bloodlust, but that won't be sated by mere conflict. And if Leith's master Thanatos has his way, the flames of war will raise entire cities. She adds that their collective efforts to build and create as both human and Kimyo, Thanatos' dream will see that they are all wiped out, and that will include the very place the Titan generals once called home, wherever that may be. As Leith begins to form something, he says Andrea sounds terribly misguided, and he asks if she thinks they serve the Death Lord with the hopes of protecting their homes, or that his vision will save the communities that birthed them. He finishes forming his lance and says on the contrary, they want it all ground to dust. He says every Titan general is an outcast saved by Thanatos' will, and she will not succeed in breaking that loyalty. Seeing Leith's torso, Andrea says she wondered why Leith hadn't covered his body in his liquid paper paste, as it seems rather durable. She says it looks as though it flows from within his body, and she presumes it's a kinesis type, and that those types tend to be painful. She adds that Leith probably attempted to control his talent's dispersal previously and failed, hence the reason his arm seems deformed. She says if war begins, there will only be more of him. Kimyo's with outstanding abilities denied the opportunity to fully master them, plunge into battle before truly understanding who they are or what brilliance their talents harbor. She says an entire generation's growth stunted and its beauty stolen, the time, peace, freedom, and will to study their gifts eviscerated, and that those after them will never have the chance. She says this is what Leith's side fights for, and if he cannot see the depravity in that, every last one of them is beyond salvation. She then says, "Come, Norigiri," as a cursed weapon starts to form from the shadows, and as she grasps it, dark and purple chi emanate from where she is. Leith tells Andrea not to lecture him, as the world he is prepared to die for is where her children will thrive. But Andrea says that she gets him, and to create that world, they're just gonna execute the children that are here now, right? And as she points Norigiri towards him, she laughs and says there's a guy named Shay, good luck getting past him with that. Now onto the highlights. First, let's look at Yukiko. The first thing I want to mention is the move she does against the 3-headed giant, where she freezes his arm, is a reference to Sabito, who does the same motion and almost the same attack in episode 74 last season. Another sort of reference that you may not consider a reference is what Yukiko is called in this episode, and that is the leopard's cub. This is obviously referring to the fact that Sabito was a snow leopard before her, and since she is the daughter of him, she is his cub. I think this name also coincides with the fact that Yukiko is younger in comparison to her brother, who is referred to as Lord Heart, while Yukiko is considered princess, which shows that Shay is the metaphorical head of the Heart clan, similar to his grandfather, while Yukiko, still being the snow leopard herself, is still getting that training and experience similar to Sabito when he was a kid. Her actual skill is something that should be noted as well, as so far, she has barely been outmatched by the giant, and considering her age, you may be able to say she's on par with the 15-year-old version of Leo we saw at the end of season 1, as I think Yukiko would be fine dealing with the opponents he was facing. The next thing I want to talk about in regards to Yukiko is the Black Ice technique, and what I think part of its purpose will be in the series. And before I get into it, I want you to keep in mind that Sabito as of now is the only other user of Hisame who knew of this style. The Yukiko herself says it's a hidden style and is a secret that Sabito only shared with Mei, which could imply that other users of Hisame knew of the technique as well, but this knowledge is only given to Hisame's bearer. Now moving on, Brent himself said in the Q&A that Yukiko is supposed to be different from her father, which is clear in her design as well as her sword of choice, but he also said he doesn't want to act as if he needs to get rid of what was good just to be different. This is more than likely the reason that Yukiko also has her father's swords while still having her own unique sword, and this also implies that Yukiko will be using some of the tactics and techniques her father used while also showing off new things from Hisame that were unseen, such as the Black Ice technique. Now the Black Ice technique was said by Lewis to be a cold that burns, and Yukiko confirms this when she says the bitter cold of it is so intense its attributes are similar to that of burning fire. This is something Brent sort of hinted at in the Q&A as well, and it almost feels like this is a way to link Yukiko to her brother, who himself has the Sunfire talent Ilios, but also has a representation of ice in the form of Vinter, which Brent did say was given to Shay since he missed out on getting the Hisame talent. But now we have two characters who are siblings who both use ice. How then do we differentiate the use of each sibling's ice-related abilities, since at a base they look the same and almost function identical as well? This is where I feel Black Ice comes in. The same way Brent used Shay's changing of the nature of his blue flames to not be hotter than his original, but to be safer to use around his allies as a means of differentiating Shay from Leo, I feel as though he is also using the Black Ice to differentiate Yukiko from not just her father, but her brother as well. This may not be directly proved by the example I'm going to use, but it does start to paint a sort of picture for us. In episode 113, Yukiko uses Black Ice to send a large slash at Tevin, after just moments prior she used the base ice to send him to the ground. In this episode again, she uses Black Ice to send out a wave-like slash, after moments prior and the entire time before she was using her base ice. This to me starts to affirm that Black Ice will be Yukiko's go-to, or more favorite technique, at least for the time being, as it is simply a stronger version of her normal ice that she can use against these stronger enemies. The second thing I want to look at is a certain thing pertaining to the conversation Andrea has with Leith. In the episode, Andrea sort of dissects Leith's talent, which could lead to a broader discussion regarding talent types. Andrea says it looks as though this talent flows from within his body, which would be a kinesis related talent. She then says Leith probably attempted to control its dispersal previously and failed, hence the reason his arm is deformed. Now Andrea is a relatively smart character regarding talents within the series, so there is more than likely some truth to what she is saying here, and Leith not denying her claims implies even more that she is right, not to mention the things she says afterwards, and based on those things, you could akin Leith's situation to that of Kevin's. Of course, Kevin's case is far more extreme, but the lack of control they both achieved over their talents is something to be noted, and adds to the overall lore of what failing to control your talent can look like. Now, since Andrea essentially reclassifies Leith's talent, I want to talk about talent types as a whole. What Andrea says to Leith can imply a talent may be misidentified, leading to it being labeled as the wrong type. However, we know a talent can be a dual type, so it's also possible Leith's talent is a creation and kinesis. The creation aspect being the literal creation of durable paper paste, and the kinesis aspect coming from the fact it flows from his body. I know this situation may add to the gripe some people have with the power system of Ordeal in regards to some types being very similar, but I'm going to use this next section to explain why some talent types are similar and why a talent would only fall into two categories while seemingly being able to be multiple, as well as why so many types exist. The last one is the easiest to explain, so we'll start there. Brent said during the end parts of the Q&A that usually when he adds another category is when the main category isn't enough. This statement is more so in regards to why a talent can have two types, but if a character has two talent types, that means a talent with just one of those types can also exist. Of course, there are probably some types that were predetermined to be in the story, but as Brent was making characters, their abilities couldn't just be explained by the one type, so another was made to explain how that character's abilities can make sense. And I'm assuming this was the case every now and then until a myriad of talents could be made due to the multiple types that now exist within the story. Next, I'm going to try to explain why some talent types are similar, and why a talent would only fall into two categories while seemingly being able to be multiple by using the same line of thinking I have for both. Now, some talent types are just fundamentally different from each other, such as haste and elemental or creation and shift, but some types are just fundamentally similar, such as control and and range control. But for me, what makes each type overall different from each other comes down to what the basic core of what the type is supposed to be and how the resulting talent. For the best example and comparison, let's look at control and range control. At first, these types seem very similar, and realistically they are, but the descriptions actually inform us how they are different. Control allows the user to manipulate objects or direct manifestations of their talent by infusing their chi into it. The immediate idea of this type is it allows the user to manipulate things, though these users would have to make contact with what they are manipulating in some capacity, as seen with Orion and his gems. But if it is a direct manifestation of their talent, this may be circumvented since they are bound together by chi. Range control, on the other hand, allows the user to dominate matter and/or objects from a distance by manipulating chi or chi-controlled manifestations. The immediate idea with this type is that the users would manipulate things from a distance, such as the Season 1 iteration of Lewis and Ash of the Fathers, and it is clear what they manipulate has to come from a source, such as Lewis's Ash, so this type wouldn't be a renamed psychic type. But remember, these are how the talents of these types would operate at a base level, and since we know talents have the capacity to grow, it's reasonable to assume that talents won't always seemingly fit the mold of what its type is, but at its core, it will always follow its type's fundamental way of operation. Now lastly, we'll look at why a talent would realistically only ever have two types, even if you think it can be more. For this, I want to use Rakesh for the example, as I feel people tend to think his talent could be about 4 different types. Aside from Anu Ankh state and corrosion type, I've seen people say it could be a shift type as well as a range control type, and this stems from the fact that Anu Ankh state completely changes Rakesh's appearance, as well as giving him access to the tendril Pharaoh protection eyes. But what seems to go over people's heads is that these are all products of Rakesh's state in the first place, which is the core aspect of his talent. Remember, state type talents give a rare power-up mode or state that grants the users special abilities. Special abilities is a very important phrase here, as it's not only abilities, but special things relating to the talent. In Rakesh's case, his state factors into every aspect of his talent we see. Now, I'm gonna bounce around parts of what the actual description says, so bear with me. It says it provides an immense boost to all physical attributes, which we see on display in his fight against the Wolf Cubs, showing speeds and striking power that eclipse what he was doing in base, or even a lesser version of his state. It says it provides high-level body armor, which we see is able to protect him from a talent weapon in the likes of Muramasa. The talent is said to be the protector of the Golden Pharaoh. Now, what does it look like Rakesh turns into when he enters his state, the Golden Pharaoh? Which means his state literally powers him up and turns him into what his talent is said to protect. The concept of protection is taken a step further when we incorporate how the corrosion aspect of the talent is affected by the state. When Rakesh enters his state, he gains access to the protection eyes, and these eyes are what protect him when he is inside his metaphorical tomb. These eyes also shoot out more magnified beams of corrosive chi, showing further how his state affects the corrosive aspect of his talent. So in conclusion, Rakesh's state talent type is the core of what his talent is, and is the very reason his talent is so expansive and seems to delve into other types. And if we took the state aspect away and tried to keep the other abilities, it wouldn't work. And you could chalk this up to the state type giving a talent aspects from other types, but that isn't even consistent with all of the state type users we've seen. So talents like Rakesh's may visually reflect other talent types, but only one main type and a secondary type will ever make up the core of how said talent functions. The last thing I want to look at is Noragiri, and a theory I came up with that could connect it to the Heart Clan. The thing that sparked this potential connection is the very last panel of the episode. When you look at Noragiri, we can see its guard, or the more accurate term, the Suba, is gold. I originally thought this part wasn't gold, but if we look back in season 2, when Andrea tries to tame it, we see it is. The reason I'm bringing this specific part of the weapon up is due to there only being one group of people so far who have been consistently shown to have gold guards as a part of their weapon, and that would be the Heart Clan. Just to make sure everyone knows this is true, I'll show you that both of Sabito's swords have a form of gold guard. Masato in episode 113 was very clearly shown to have a gold guard, and all of Malhazar's grandchildren have golden guards as well, with the only exceptions to this being Malhazar himself and any other Heart Clan member we haven't seen use a sword, as well as Yukiko, who has a different type of sword altogether. Now noticing that is what led me to think Noragiri may somehow be connected to the Heart Clan, but when thinking about it even more, there's a potential even clearer connection. When thinking about Noragiri, it is most known for its desire for a host and the ability to control whoever wields it. Now, what talent in the story has a similar MO to that? The Thanatos talent, with said talent being most known for its capacity to override the user's will, leaving them with a desire to fulfill Thanatos' will. Two talents that have a very similar way of operating in this specific manner existing can't be a coincidence. But the question then becomes, how is this possible? And the only way I could see this being the case is if Malhazar or a prior user of Thanatos wielded Noragiri, and the Thanatos talent infected the weapon, giving it the desire to take over people and making it the weapon we know today. Of course, this theory isn't certain, and Noragiri can simply be a weapon that developed a very rare form of talent. I really enjoyed the fact that Yukiko got her own shine in this episode, though I wish we could have gotten more after her last panel. I also feel as though her part in the episode could have been added to the previous one, but I think her and Andrea being the spotlights in this episode was sort of the intent, and why she gets her own section as the opening act of the episode. In regards to Andrea, I liked the conversation she has with Leith, but before that, I enjoyed seeing her be tactical as she deals with the two men with ease, but then punches the truck, destroying that part of it so it can't be driven away in case someone else shows up to take the shipment. One thing I didn't like though was how fast Otori Jero was sidelined, as I expected a little more from the weapon. I'm also kind of surprised she summoned Noragiri so soon, as her idea to use it with her left arm implied she may dual wield the two weapons at some point. But anyway, that's the video guys. Let me know what your favorite part of the chapter was in the comments below, as well as how you feel about the things I mentioned in the highlights section. Don't forget to read the actual episode for yourself, and be sure to like it as well. And I will see y'all in the next one.